No person shall be convicted of any crime unless and until each element of the crime is proven beyond a reasonable doubt.
And we are back, Y'all go ahead and hit that like button for Yak Gotti, y'all. Hit that like button for Diamante Kendrick, y'all. This video is going to be about why I think Diamante Kendrick could very well be found not guilty on all charges. Now, we're going to have to walk through some of the things that happened in court this past week and even last week in order to get a complete understanding of it. But y'all, hit that like button. Don't forget to comment and subscribe once we're finished with this video, and let's go ahead and get into it. Now, the first thing I want to do is show this tweet, this kind of collage that I found on this Twitter account. I don't know if this was the first person to post it or not, but we're going to give credit where I found it. Now, on this tweet, you're going to see all of the charges that Yak has on the left-hand side and all of the charges that Shannon has on the right-hand side. They both share count 1 and 2, and that's why that's kind of in the middle on both of them. Now, for Yak, some of these charges were dismissed essentially through the directed verdict. Can you tell which ones? If you've been paying attention, you should know. You may remember that his attorney moved for directed verdict. Now, that's where this comes into play because he took codeine off the table and he took the machine gun off the table, and I think it was cocaine off the table for Yak. So what does that mean off the table? That means that the evidence that the police collected that they used to charge Yak, the codeine, the cocaine, the machine gun, which I believe was a switch, which was like a Glock with a switch. All of those are taken off the table, can't be used against Yak, and those counts are essentially dismissed. We had a debate as to what's the terminology you use when you get a directed verdict. I said I'm going to go with dismissed, okay? So what that means is when the jury is looking at the elements of a crime, and y'all saw that with the beginning with my coming up here, when the jury's looking at the elements of the crime, the codeine, the cocaine, the switch, all of that cannot be considered anymore. So Judge Whitaker says she's just going to delete those out of the charges, right? So what that means is that now the jury is just left with marijuana and some guns. So what we're going to do is let's take a look at Hilton explaining the marijuana and the guns and how that affects Yak and how she's trying to pin that on Yak in order to convict him.
You'll see, and we said it again, that on the left-hand side were the charges for Mr. Kendrick, on the right-hand side were the charges for Mr. Stillwell, and in the middle is what they were both charged with. So Mr. Kendrick is charged with possession of marijuana with intent to distribute. That's from May 9, 2022, when he was found running from Mr. Williams' house. Remember, the officer came and said that they both must have been out of breath and he ran from the house. And the drugs and the guns that were found inside the house. The marijuana and the guns that were found in the house. So in order to prove this, we have to show that the defendant possessed with the intent to distribute any amount of marijuana. Marijuana includes all parts of the plant. What it does not include is the hemp products and all those other technical terms that I'm not going to try to pronounce for you tonight. We have to show that he possessed it and has possessed the marijuana or the firearm. We're going to talk about the firearm in a moment. Possession must be actual or constructive, sold or joint. So we're going to tell you that it's not actual possession. No one caught him with the marijuana in the hand. We're going to talk about constructive possession. At the time of the alleged offense, he did not have direct physical control over the marijuana or firearm, but then knowingly had both the ability and the intention to exercise control over the marijuana. We know he doesn't have sole possession. We're going to focus on joint possession. Defendants share possession of marijuana or firearms with at least one other person. What evidence do we have of it? And I know Mr. Wine said we didn't have any evidence. We do. Pictures are evidence. That's direct evidence like we talked about earlier. This is inside of the home of Mr. Williams. That's the money counter that was sitting next to the Tupperware bowl full with the marijuana. That's the Tupperware bowl full with the marijuana. That's the more marijuana that was in that cabinet in that same kitchen right across from where the Tupperware bowl of the marijuana was. And those are the two guns that were found inside that area. Now, ladies and gentlemen, you heard the testimony that SWAT, when they came, did not immediately make entry into the house. It was like announced, it was loud, So I submit to you that they had the opportunity to put stuff away, to hide stuff, because they didn't just come in immediately, Your Honor, ladies and gentlemen. So you can take that into consideration as you deliberate. Possession of a firearm during the commission of a felony. So the state must prove that the defendants had a firearm on his person or within arm's reach while committing a crime against or involving another person. For Mr. Stillwell, it's murder. For Mr. Kendrick, it's the possession of marijuana with intent to distribute. So how do we show this? Mr. Kendrick, again, you have the firearms inside of the house at the time when the house is raided. There were two found inside of that cabinet. There was the one that's found on this counter. Now, they're also both charged with possession of a firearm by a convicted felon.
So let's listen again to the jury's questions about this and try to get oriented as to what they might be thinking. Now, as it relates to the question about the watch, I think, and many people in my live in the chat and other people who have been observing, we think that it might be possible that the jury's asking about the watch because maybe they're trying to establish whether Yak was actually living with Thug or not. They might have thought that Weinstein said that Detective Viverito, or one of the police officers, took Yak's watch. And if Yak had such an expensive watch at Thug's house in the closet with a bunch of jewelry, maybe it would seem like Yak's actually living there as opposed to just visiting. And that would lend more credence to the idea that that marijuana and those other items, the guns and whatnot, might have actually pertained to Yak, at least through constructive possession. But if the watch wasn't Yak's, then of course that would lend credence to the idea, or at least it would tend to indicate maybe he wasn't living there. So that's our theory about that, but I'd be interested to hear your theory as well.
Sorry. Good? Okay. All right, moving on to the questions. Mr. Weinstein said the watch. However, remember that nothing that the attorneys say is evidence. All right, moving on to the next couple of questions. All right, on count 58, possession of marijuana with intent to distribute, the state must prove that Mr. Kendrick knowingly and intentionally participated in or helped in possessing marijuana, intending to unlawfully deliver or sell it. Does that cover what y'all are asking with regard to that one? Yes, okay. All right, moving on to whether you need to group counts 57, 58, and 61 individually or separately. You will need to consider them individually and reach a verdict as to each of them separately, but possession of marijuana with intent to distribute would need to be proven for count 58, count 61, and count 57. Does that cover what y'all wanted to? Okay. All right, then I will excuse y'all to continue deliberations. Thank you.
Now let's shoot into one of my favorite YouTube explainers, legal explainers, Kat Not Williams. Anybody who's not subscribed to Kat, anybody who's not following Kat, anybody who's not listening to Kat, stop everything, stop what you're doing, go over. I'm going to link to Kat in the description. Kat is excellent. She's the one who I listen to every day before I started doing these daily lives myself. Now let's shoot into her explanation of the jury questions relating to marijuana and how that could affect Yak. And this is why Yak he's looking good as it relates to these charges, y'all. Let's take a look at what Kat has to say.
Guys, so if you're coming in late, the jury had a few questions. They wanted to understand the clarity. They wanted some clarity on intent and the counts. We can look at the counts here. You heard Atkins, the mic was cut off when the feed started, but we started with Atkins saying like predicate acts, blah, 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 blah. Now the counts in question, now the language is going to be different, right? This is the indictment copy that I have. I don't have the copy that went back with the jury, but because the directed verdict dismissed the possession of codeine and the possession of cocaine, the language of this count as the jury sees it will only say possession of marijuana with intent to distribute. So for the jury to find Diamante Kendrick guilty of count 57. They have to agree that that the state proved beyond a reasonable doubt all of the elements required. And this offense here is participation in criminal street gang activity. Did unlawfully while associated with a criminal street gang, YSL, participate in criminal street gang activity through the commission of at least, it probably doesn't say at least anymore, one of the offense of possession of marijuana with intent to distribute. This is from May 2022, the raid on Jeffrey Williams' home, and they're asking about this intent. Now, remember, if they don't think that weed was his, they can't say, well, we think he participated in criminal street gang activity, because it would be necessary for them to also find that he was in possession of that weed and also had intent to distribute it. Right? So all of those things need to be here. So if they don't think he was in possession of that weed with intent to distribute it, this goes off the table because an element is gone. Same thing. This one is just violation of the Controlled Substances Act with possession of marijuana with intent to distribute. No additional criteria needs to be met. But again, if they don't think that he was in possession or had intent to distribute, off the table. So if they find not guilty on 58, essentially it can't be a guilty on 57. That would be an error of law. That would be an inconsistent verdict. If the other count was 61, and again, we're not going to have this codeine or this cocaine language here. It's only the marijuana left on the table here. But possession of a firearm during commission of a felony, and this is all the guns they had during the raid, minus the one machine gun, the Glock 30S, the Glock 357, the FN firearm, the Glock 19 firearm, Smith & Wesson at M&P, the Glock 45, or I think this is the one that they removed from this count. So I believe this was modified before it was sent to the jury. That firearm with the converter switch, I don't think is part of the language anymore. And then this would say, while during the commission of this felony here, possession of marijuana with intent to distribute. So again, if they find not guilty on 58, possession of marijuana with intent to distribute, then it would be an inconsistent verdict if they ended up finding guilty here, because they say not guilty on this predicate act requirement here. So the questions that they're asking to me look very, very, very good for Diamante Kendrick.
Finally, the jury wanted to see the Texaco footage again. That was the gas station where Yak was right before the Donovan Thomas killing. And they also wanted to see the surveillance video from when Thomas actually got shot. They might have been wanting to see that barbershop surveillance footage to try to determine if the white Bonneville had come down the road right before the gray Infiniti, which did the shooting. If you look closely, it is quite clear that the vehicles caught on surveillance footage that come down the road right before the shooting, none of them is a white Bonneville. It's not, there's no, there have been people who have done some kind of side-by-sides. I don't even feel like that's necessary. It's quite clear that the car that Yak got into at the gas station, that car is not captured, nor is any car that appears it could be that car captured on the surveillance footage that they showed in court. But here we'll play the surveillance footage again, because it looks like the jury's trying to determine, one, maybe if that car came down the road, which it certainly did not, but also, two, they may be trying to piece together, what the heck was Yak actually doing at that gas station for so long? So we're going to play that here just as they saw it in court, and you can try to make your determination. For me, I think there's enough here for reasonable doubt. Again, I've said many times that when you see Woody on the stand, that in and of itself is enough for reasonable doubt as to whether or not Yak did it. But take a look at the surveillance footage as they saw it in court. What do you think? What's your opinion?
Excuse me, Your Honor, may we approach?
Yes. Do you want me to stop the video?
Yes, please.
Okay.
Your Honor, for the record, we're on camera 10 at 18:44:31.
We're not sure exactly which getting into the car you meant, so we're just trying to show all of them for y'all, okay?
This law is still on. Mr. Weinstein?
So, Your Honor, at this point, for the record, we're going to stop it and stop sharing and then fast forward to the next point that he gets into the car.
Okay.
We're stopping at 18:48:17. We're fast forwarding now to 19:15:25 on camera 10. So that was the second time he got in the car. Now we're going to fast forward to the next time he gets in the car. Which will be at 19:15:52. We're fast forwarding to that.
All right, does that satisfy what y'all wanted to see on that?
No, that's not the last
Oh,
time he got in
okay.
the car.
All right, sorry.
We're fast forwarding.
Sorry, thought y'all said 3 times.
So we're now
My bad.
fast forwarding to 19, 17, and 10. Those are the times that he,
Does that satisfy what y'all wanted to see? Y'all are nodding yes. Okay, all right. Now we'll move on to the barbershop video.
Your Honor. And for the record, it's 292 Yankee Alpha, and we're starting at 8 minutes and 22 seconds of that exhibit. Your Honor, may you inquire if there's any more of this video? I'm stopping for the record at 9 minutes and 14 seconds.
All right. Does that satisfy what y'all wanted to see on that, or is there a different angle or more that you want to see? That's good. Okay, that's what they wanted to see. All right, moving on.